Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you so much for tuning in to us at spacedoutradio.com as well as Spreaker. Now, normally we are coming in from the frozen Canadian tundra. We're battling our way past the wild animals. We're sidestepping Bigfoot to enter Uncle Jimbo's cabin. We got to heat this place up, so we stoke the fire to broadcast to you live on this Friday night, early Saturday morning if you're on the East Coast. However, tonight we're doing things a little bit differently. Why? While you're sitting in front of your radio, I am sitting in Las Vegas. I am sitting at the Guns N' Roses concert for their first reunion, and all my listeners know what kind of a GNR fan I am, so I'm pretty stoked. But nonetheless, the show must go on. And we will be talking alien abduction with Byron Lacy tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Here at SOR, we do this thing 7 days a week. We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, conspiratorial, ufological, and extraterrestrial, as well as so much more. Spaced Out Radio's theme music is courtesy of guitar god Ron Bumblefoot THAL. You can find his new album and so much more by going to spacedoutradio.com and look for Little Brother Is Watching. If you're a social media junkie like I am, I would love it if you could follow us on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and of course our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, as we always do, we love sending a shout out to our fans in the Spaced Out Radio chat room, along with Paranormal Into the Night and Paranormal Forum. If you're a fan of SOR, coming soon on our website is the Space Travelers membership, where for only $5 a month you can win prizes, take part in private group interviews, get a monthly newsletter, have a special section on our website, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a heck of a lot more than just access to our archives. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. You can read the new Agora newspaper by clicking on their banner. And the Spirit Story Box. It's only available on iPhone, but it's the official ghost hunting app of Spaced Out Radio. The experience of extraterrestrial contact is one of disbelief for some and controversy for others. There are so many different stories with so many different beings that it can boggle one's imagination as to what is true and what is just someone's overactive mind. There is still a fine line drawn down the middle of the alien abduction phenomena, and tonight we're hoping to get some critical answers to what people are experiencing around the planet on a nightly basis. Some people report horrific experiences by the Greys or other beings, where they almost feel like a guinea pig being experimented on. People reporting surgeries, women reporting false pregnancies. It can get ugly. Then there's the other side of the equation where people are calling their contact experiences one of illuminating knowledge and peace, one that is almost heavenly and spiritual. Byron Lacy is a contactee. How far he's gone? Well, we're going to ask him in a few minutes. He's an advocate for people coming forward with their alien experiences. His book is called Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee, which is available on Amazon. We bring Byron into Space Out Radio now. Byron, thank you so much for being with us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dave. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Now, technically, I'm not here, but I'm here, which means you're not here, but you're here as well. So we're going to have some fun with this tonight, and I'm going to enjoy Guns N' Roses on the real side, but on the recording side, I'm excited to talk to you about the phenomena of alien abduction, and I've heard a lot of great things about you, Byron. You and I talked once. I'm not sure if you remember. We met through Misha Johnson in one of her contactee groups, and she kept saying, Dave, you got to get Byron on the air. So that's why I'm excited to have you with us.
Yep. Misha's great the way she helps people, and I've been on her radio show once, and I do remember talking to you.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to finally get you on Spaced Out Radio. We've been talking about this for a couple of months, and now we're finally able to do it, which makes me very happy because I have such a thrill in the whole aspect of aliens, extraterrestrials, abductions, and contacts. I'm an experiencer myself. I know you're an experiencer. Can you please tell my audience when everything started for you with your first experience?
My first experience was in 1955, and it played out over three evenings or 3 nights in a row. The first night I woke up, I was 5 years old, and we had just moved to Seagoville, Texas. And I didn't wake up. My mom put me in bed, turned out the light, and walked out of the room. And I started to turn around to settle down. And there were 3 little men standing on the side at the foot of my bed looking at me. Well, I was shocked. I had never expected to see 3 little guys about 4 foot tall doing that, being in my house, didn't know where they came from. So I yelled for Mom. She walked in the door, and of course they were gone. And I told her what I'd seen, and she said, well, go to sleep. She tucked me in and left. The second night, the same thing happened. And then the third night she came in, and this time she sat down sat down beside me on the bed and put her hand on top of my head. And she said, son, you're just going to have to deal with them yourself because they're not going to be here when I get in here. So don't call me anymore. And then she tucked me in and she left the room. Well, this time when I settled down to go to sleep, they were back. They were standing at the foot of my bed, and I noticed this creature about 7 feet tall. Now, he looked like Captain Hook from the movie Peter Pan by Walt Disney. And I had a picture book about Peter Pan, and I was always fond of pirates at that age and for a few years after that. And I even thought the little guys, their big black eyes, they looked like pirates' patches. And because of being 5, it didn't bother me that they had patches on both of their eyes. Well, my bed, first off, it seemed like I couldn't move, and my bed started to rotate in the center of the room, and the room had gotten much bigger. I didn't have any time to wonder about that, but I noticed it. And the 7 foot tall guy, he was dancing around the room in this weird angular motion, sticking his elbows up in the air and stuff. And he was wearing a big pirate's hat, a white puffy sleeve shirt, and a vest that fanned out. And I could not see what his legs looked like or anything like that. And I couldn't see his hands, but I couldn't move. And this really sort of startled me. And this was at the point where I began to get a little bit upset. And I looked down at my hands, my wrists, and they weren't tied. I couldn't really tell if my legs were tied or not, but I couldn't move them. And then just all of a sudden, the room was the correct size. All four of them were gone, and I could move. So I pulled the blanket over my head and went to sleep because I didn't want to see them if they came back. And I've done that ever since. I pulled the blanket over my head and put a pillow over my head. At that time, it was so I wouldn't have to see them. Not that they frightened me, but they were very confusing. And now I just do it from habit.
Byron, I'm a little amazed that your mother would say to you, don't call me into your room anymore because they're not going to be here when I get here. That sounds like a very stern message, almost ominous that she knew this was going on.
Yes, I felt the same way. And now at that time, I didn't know what was going on. I had never heard of aliens. They weren't on TV. There wasn't talk about aliens in 1955, at least not where I was at. And a few things happened over the years that reinforced me thinking, well, I found out what was going on in 2009. Until 2009, I thought that spirit guides, ghosts, God, something was helping me, but I didn't know what it was because I've had a lot of strange things happen. And there was no other explanation at that point. But anyway, with things that have happened, and also in 2009, after I found out what was going on, I went to the Dreamland Festival with Whitley Strieber. And there was a psychic medium there named Marla Freeze. And she was the technical advisor for the television show Medium. She's worked with police, all kinds of things. Well, I went prepared for her, and I even took a picture of my father with me, and I was the only one that did that. Well, she made contact with my father, and she told me a few things that made me know it was him. For instance, she knew the way he died. And my question for him was, did you know about the aliens? And she said that his voice boomed out, and she said it real loud. She said, I know everything. And I went, yep, that's my dad, because he thinks he knows everything. Well, he told her that I was the fourth generation of our family to be abducted. My great-grandfather, who came here from Ireland, was the first generation, and then my grandfather and my father, and probably my mother and my grandmothers as well.
Were you surprised to find out that it was a generational interaction with the extraterrestrials? And was your family interacting with the same groups that you are?
I was surprised because I didn't know that situation existed. After I was told, I talked with a friend of mine, Daryl Sims, the alien hunter, who I'd been communicating with him at that time, mostly by email, but met him a few times in person. And he told me that indeed they did take long lists of people from families. So I don't know who they were dealing with because they never talked to me about it. And every time I brought it up, they would do their best to make me quiet without mentioning why, except one key time. And now, if I get a date wrong from the date in my book, the date in the book is correct. But if I'm not mistaken, it was around the age of 11. And it was when the song, Does Your Chewing Gum Lose Its Flavor on the Bedpost Overnight, was a big hit in the United States. And what happened at that time was I've been listening to that song for several days. And when I went to bed, that song started playing in my head. And I had never experienced jingles or songs playing in my head of their own accord before. Of course, it was in my own voice, but the way I hear songs in my head, well, it started playing and it played all night long, and I did not sleep any. The next morning, my mom came in to wake me up to go to school. Of course, I was already awake, and I told her I couldn't go to school, that I was dead tired, and I told her what had happened. She told me to get dressed and come in the living room, and she seemed very concerned. So I did. I went into the living room and she put me on the sofa and she said, "You watch TV," and she gave me a soft drink, "and you don't go to sleep because I want you to go to school tomorrow." And then she left the room and went into the dining room. And I could see her in there making a phone call, but I couldn't hear what she was saying or who she was talking to. Well, I stayed on the sofa all day watching TV. And around 5 o'clock, my dad came home. And my father was a prison guard at a federal prison. He was 6 foot 2 or 3 and weighed over 200 pounds, but it wasn't fat at that time. It was all muscle. And he looked a lot like Dirty Harry. He kept his hair cut in a burr so that a prisoner couldn't grab him by the hair. Well, he walked in the door and he walked straight to my mother and took her into the dining room, and they had some kind of conversation. Then they come back into the room. He comes back into the room and she stayed in the dining room, and he sits down on the sofa and he says, "Son, if you don't straighten up, we're going to take you to a psychiatrist." And that was, I didn't know where that statement was coming from, because I didn't think it had been all that strange for me to have a song playing in my head, maybe, but it seemed like it was. And that is, at that point, I decided that I could not tell my parents anything, not anything that was going on in my life, because they would do something to me. And at that time, going to a psychiatrist was there was a stigma to it in public. It wasn't like it is now. So then he said, we don't talk about ourselves. I don't even know anything that happened to my parents except when I was with them, because they didn't talk about themselves. And you don't want people to know about you. He told me that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, a female relative of mine had told people that little men came into her room at night and talked to her. And because of that, she ended up being placed in an insane asylum, which is what they were called at that time. And she died there eventually. And he said, "You don't want that to happen to you." Now, I still wasn't relating any of this even to the little men coming into my room in 1955, because I had never talked about it to anyone. And I remembered it, but it was like having an extra piece to your puzzle, and it had to just get pushed over to the side. It didn't make any sense. So it wasn't until 2009 that I understood the significance of these two events together. And in fact, several times over the years, my father would give me the same speech when I hadn't even mentioned little men or anything like that.
Did you notice almost like a type of conflict in your family regarding these experiences, Byron, as you were growing up? Because there were certain people, like your dad held down a very professional job. He was a strong man, strong-willed man. And, you just can't, especially during that time, come out and say, by the way, we have extraterrestrial experiences in our family. Some people will think it's hogwash, other people will laugh, and then next thing you know, back then, they threw everybody in the insane asylum for one way or another, and he probably was doing that what he felt out of protection, whereas you just wanted answers to what was going on.
Correct. Well, anytime anything came up, like in 1961, I saw my first spaceship, and I saw it with about 20 people. I was in school and I was in music class, and we had a substitute teacher that day. I had never seen her before, and I never saw her again. And Seagoville was a pretty small town. Well, she decided, since the weather was beginning to turn nice, that we would go outside and do calisthenics. We weren't too hot about that because we were a music class. We didn't want to go do exercises, but we didn't complain much. And we went outside, and we were on this gravel parking lot beside the school. She was standing under a huge oak tree about 35, 45 feet tall, and she made us line up and reach our arms out so that we wouldn't hit each other when we started doing side straddle hops. And that's what she had us do first. And we started doing them, and she was counting, and then there were about 20 of us. We all just stopped and were staring up at the top of the tree with our arms limp by our side, almost like we were paralyzed or something when you see something fantastical like that. And over the tree was this. I was very much into models, model cars, model boats, model planes at that time. And this looked like the nose of the George Washington nuclear submarine turned upside down with the conning tower moved and the deck of the battleship Missouri attached to it, the bottom of it. But instead of guns, where a gun would be, it was a large room, and you could see some portholes, but I couldn't see anyone. And this ship started moving over the top of the tree, and then it was gone. And she said, "Okay, that was nothing. Let's get back to work." So we do about, and this was unusual that we all did exactly like we were told, didn't complain, didn't mention what we had just seen. We did about 4 more side straddle hops, and the bell rang. So it took we experienced about 10 minutes, but it was an hour. So there's 30 to 40 missing time in that experience. She told us to go back in. We all went in. Nobody ever talked about it much. I don't remember ever talking to anyone about it. Now, except recently. Recently, I've been in contact with more students that I went to school with, and that wasn't high school. But one woman told me she was not in school that week. She had pneumonia, and several people told her about that event when she got back to school the next week. So this is the first time anyone has mentioned it. And I've always felt this was probably a cigar-shaped craft, but it had screen memories tied into it. Except that 2 or 3 months ago, I posted a picture of this because I made a model out of it and posted on Facebook. And another man said he had seen that ship. Of course, it could have been a screen memory for him as well.
When you look back at all your experiences, Byron, are you amazed at the amount of people you had experiences with? And the reason why I ask you that is I know that for myself being an experiencer, it was almost like whoever they are, wanted me to know that I needed someone there to support my sighting or my experience as a witness. So I knew personally I wasn't crazy or wasn't seeing things or having an overactive imagination. Do you believe that may have happened with you as well to kind of strengthen the resolve as to what was happening to you?
Yes. In a way, I do think that, although none of us talked about it. When I got home, I asked my mother if she'd heard anything on the radio or the news about a ship, a UFO, and she said no. And that was all that was said about it. That's why I'm saying they just ignored things. But now I've had my car moved on a road about 20 to 30 miles with another person in the car. However, at that point, I did know I was abducted. I had one key event that happened in 2009 that a friend pointed out to me. I was being abducted because of this event.
We are talking with Byron Lacy tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He is an ET abductee. You can find his book on Amazon. It's called Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee. At what point, Byron, did you actually consider yourself an abductee?
It was in 2009. And like I said, I thought these were spirit guides, guardian angels. In 2009, I went to dinner, and I had a friend who was very interested in UFOs and all the conspiracy theories, and had been even before much of it was on computer, because he had done a lot of research in books. I call him Frank in the book. he would show me films about UFOs, some, and I would fall asleep. I have a real problem with going to sleep at night, but for some reason I could always fall asleep in front of these movies. And it's not that they were, or videos, it's not that they were boring. I really don't understand why. He thought that was significant later. But on this particular day, I had eaten dinner and I was driving home and I was still in town, stopped at a stoplight in front of, on the most major street in our town, North Street. And up above me, I was watching the stoplight, getting ready to go. Up above me, at the end of the stoplight, a disc about the size of a dinner plate suddenly appeared in the air, and it looked like it was made out of swirling water or plasma or something, and it quickly expanded to 6 feet across and 6 feet tall, and it looked exactly like the Stargate in the movie with I can't remember his name right now, the movie Stargate, and except it did not have a metal frame around it. Well, I closed my eyes to see if it would disappear, and I didn't see it when my eyes were closed, but when I opened them, it was right there. I moved my head from side to side. It stayed exactly where it was. I was trying to find out if it was in my head instead of where it looked like it was. I looked around at the other cars around me and nobody was paying any attention to it. So I knew that somehow they didn't see it. And then it exploded without making any sound. It burst out into these drops of whatever it was and started falling towards the ground. But they dissipated and disappeared before they reached the ground. I went home. When I got home, I called Frank and told him about it, and we had a brief conversation, but he didn't comment about it at all, which that made me sort of worry about myself because he always had something to say. Well, we didn't mention it all week, and we would go for walks for our health. We'd walk 3 miles every day at the creek in town. The exact same day the next week, and almost the same time, and I was going home from eating out that day, the same thing happened. The disc appeared, it expanded, nobody paid any attention to it. I did the same test to see if it was in my head or not, and it wasn't. Well, it blew up, and I went on home. The next day, I went to walk with Frank, and I mentioned it happening again, and he didn't say anything. During the whole walk, he didn't say anything, and I was going, I just can't deal with this. I'm going to ask him. So I did. I said, what do you think that was? And he said, you really want to know? And I said, yeah, I really want to know. And he said, I think you're an abductee. And I told him he was crazy. And he turns around and writes down about 4 or 5 web pages, the addresses to him on a piece of paper. And he goes, you look these up when you get home. Well, when I got home, I tossed the paper on the desk next to my computer and didn't look any of them up.
Oh, good. Good. Byron, I'm going to get you to hold on here. We are going to hop out for our first break of the night. We are talking with Byron Lacy tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He's an extraterrestrial abductee. You can find his book on Amazon, Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee, True Events Experienced by Byron Lacy. It's a great book. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back after this break.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Hi there. This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 Mediums and a Large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us, So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anglin, and on the last Monday of every month, I join Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. We delve into everything from extraterrestrial contact to animal communication. It's a lot of fun, and every month it's something different and exciting. I would love it if you would join us. You can hear and learn from my experiences, and I'd like to know about yours as well. Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to advertise on Spaced Out Radio? Getting your message out to Spaced Out Radio's listeners will benefit you. Our listeners are loyal, intelligent, and supportive, and they support those who support this broadcast. For pricing and information, you could go to spacedoutradio.com to find the pricing guide that suits your needs, with many options to choose from. Advertise with Spaced Out Radio today by contacting us at info@spacedoutradio.com.
Want to connect with us online? Find us on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show, on Twitter @Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR, on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. All right, space travelers, here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. And welcome back for the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. In spirit, I am here. I am your host, Dave Scott. In spirit, Byron Lacy, our guest, is with us as well. Before we bring Byron back on, I do want to remind you that tomorrow night and right through Monday, Uncle Jimbo James Tyson will be here for Spaced Out Weekend, and then he is going to be hosting the show on Monday night as I have a Vegas recovery night, which will be a lot of fun, as Don Short will be his guest on Monday night. And Spaced Out Weekend, of course, runs Saturday and Sunday. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also ask to join our private Spaced Out Radio group, as well as Podcast Central. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. Subscribe to that if you'd like. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. Once again, we bring in author Byron Lacy here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Byron, thank you so much for being with us again. It's an absolute pleasure to get a chance to chat with you about your abduction experiences.
I've been enjoying it. The talking.
Well, exactly. I mean, and there's no breaks here, so we're just pushing right through as we normally do. Byron, when did you start to realize that you should start recording your own experiences? Because for a lot of people, they have the experience, but we always seem to forget, in myself included, to put pen to paper.
Well, it started out sort of by accident in a way. But on top of that, though, Daryl Sims had been encouraging me to write these things down and to take pictures, but I was having a very difficult time doing that. And I did write things down in emails at first to him. So that's how I started keeping a log. And then I began to realize that a lot of things in my past that were unexplained as to their origin were alien. And so I started writing down everything that had ever happened that was strange, like the very first encounter and then on up. Then I started deciding I was going to write a book because I liked the stories and people had always enjoyed hearing them. And at that point, that's when I actually started journaling because I realized I didn't have enough stuff for a book at that particular point in time. And that was in 2009.
At that point, how often were your experiences of being taken?
They're 1 to 3 times a month. Usually only 2 to 4 times, 2 to 4 months have 3 times in them. It's almost, I think they've only missed one month last year. And of course, it could be that there just weren't any marks and I didn't feel bad, so I didn't know. Are you there, Dave?
I sure am. I have a sticky microphone mute button, and it catches me all the time, and so I fully apologize for that. And here I am talking with my microphone off, and now it's on. But Byron, a lot of people who have as many experiences as you do, they find that after a while that they are able to communicate with the extraterrestrials to find out simple questions like, why do you keep taking me? Why me? What is this for? Why are you doing this? Have you been able to communicate with all of your experiences now with the extraterrestrials as to why, when your first experience that you knew happened in 1950s to today, that they've been taking you for almost 60 years?
I have had communications with them. I've had 3 experiences where I saw them, which was in 1955, 2009, and then last year, 2015. They have spoken to me psychically in my head, especially in 2009 and 10. It's never been anything important. I've tried to catch them, and one day I thought I had the perfect question to actually find out something about them, and I said, because we were talking briefly, or thinking briefly, however you want to look at it, and I said, why have you saved my life 8 times? And I thought I was going to get a really good answer, and they said, we want you alive, and they left. So they gave me no answer at all. They've kept me from being in a car wreck by warning me. I was at Lowe's and I was getting ready to leave and come the short way home, and a voice in my head, and this voice speaks in the very center of my brain, right below the pineal gland, and it never says I. I always say I in my head when I'm talking to myself. It told me to take the loop, and I said, I don't want to take the loop. It's the long way home. And it said, you'll be in an accident. And I suddenly realized I wasn't talking to myself at all, because it can be a surprise when they just pop in. So I said, look, I really appreciate you looking after me, and I hope that you continue. I'm going to go ahead and take the short way home, but I will be very careful. On that trip, I was getting ready. I had just pressed my foot down on the accelerator when the guy in the lane next to me, it was a 4-lane road, pulled right into my lane, and I almost hit him. And I put on the horn, and he slammed on his brakes. I threw myself into the other lane and went around him, and then he passed me again and slammed on his brakes. And I was at an exit, So I just took the exit. But if they had not warned me, I would not have been watching when I pressed on the accelerator, because I was being alert for something to happen, and it did. I would have had an accident, and it was a huge car, and I was in a little bitty one.
Well, that's positive reinforcement if I've ever heard one.
There was another event that I find very humorous. There's a lot of things they do that make me think they have a sense of humor. They weren't trying to be humorous. I was at Hastings and I was looking for a movie, and I ran across one that I'd seen the cover to many times, which is called Buried. And it takes place, it's a man buried in a wooden box in the Middle East who's been kidnapped. The whole 95% of the movie takes place in that box. I never watched it because I have claustrophobia. So I thought, well, I'm going to watch this movie. And I reached out to take it, and the voice, and I knew this time what the voice was. It said, "No, don't watch that." And I said, well, I want to try and I want to watch it. And he said, "You won't be able to." And I said, okay. I said, well, I really appreciate this, but I'm going to go ahead and rent it. And you may be right. And thank you. And please don't stop looking out for me. So I got home and I put the movie in. I sat down on the sofa and turned it on, and the screen opens up. The entire scene is total blackness. And you hear somebody fumbling around. And then you hear him clicking a cigarette lighter, which comes on, and he's in this box. And right there, I almost freaked out. I put my legs up on the sofa. I went, I can watch this. And I turned it off. So they were right. A year later, I had been working on non-attachment to things, not relating them to yourself. And I watched that movie, and this time they didn't say anything to me, and I was able to watch the same thing. And it was an excellent movie. I would rate it a 10.
Yet for some reason they didn't want you watching that movie at that specific time. It kind of makes you wonder. And, I had a personal experience like that with myself back in 2013 where I loved my ATV. And I had been asked to go riding with a couple of friends who I don't normally ride with. And I said, sure. And I started driving up about an hour and 20 minutes away from where we were going to go riding. And the entire time I had this voice telling me, do not ride today. Turn around, go home. Today is not a good day to ride. And I kept pushing it off, and pushing it off. Well, 15 minutes into our ride at 5 miles an hour, I rolled my ATV over a boulder into a washout. I fell off my ATV. It rolled over top of me and down an embankment 150 feet.
Wow.
And ever since then, I have listened to that little voice. I don't know whether it's from the soul. I don't know whether it's my guides or my extraterrestrials that are watching over me. But I do know this. When I hear that voice pipe up now, I do know it's best to listen.
Yes. I first heard that voice that I know of, that I was aware of, in 1999. And I was doing this experiment. I thought that there had to be a door in the back of the head where we could get out and go to the other side, but not be dead and be able to come back. So I worked on this for almost a year. And I would get in extremely deep. I got really good at meditating. I got into extremely deep states of meditation. And one night I was getting ready to get in bed to meditate. It was about 7 or 8 o'clock. And this voice, which I had never heard before, said, "You're going to be given the opportunity to die." And I thought, what the heck? Only I didn't say heck. That's the weirdest thought I've ever had. Well, I should have tied that to what I was trying to do, but I didn't. So I laid down and did my experiment for 30 or 40 minutes. The next night, the same thing happened. And the night after that, the same thing happened. Then on the fourth night, there was no voice. And for some reason, I just didn't even think about it. So I started doing my meditation. Suddenly, I couldn't feel myself breathing. I couldn't feel my body, and I couldn't feel myself breathing, and I couldn't feel my heart beating. So I raised my consciousness up just a little bit, and I saw that they were still working and that my body was taking care of itself. And then I let go. And when I did, I slipped into total blackness with no phosphenes. And you know how you see little dots of light in your eyes?
Yes.
When you have them closed, there were none of them. It was complete blackness. And I felt myself getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I could feel what it was my ego. But at the time, I could feel all of my mental hangups, things I'd felt bad about all my life. Anything like that, I felt it leaving me. And as these things left, I kept getting smaller and smaller, and they were all gone, and I was the size of the end of a pencil lead. And at that point, I had no connection with my body at all, period. A bright light opened up to the side. It filled half of what I was seeing. So I was looking at complete blackness and this light, but because I had no eyes, it wasn't affecting me in that manner. I could look at it. And I thought, wow, this is really weird. And I should have thought going into the light, but I didn't. And I thought, I think I can go into this if I want to. But I wonder what it is. And I wished at that point that I had a phone where I could call somebody and ask them. But of course I didn't. And I knew if I just wanted to, I could move into it. And then I'd go, I live 14 miles out of town. If I were to die or have a heart attack or something while doing this, there's no way I could get out of bed, crawl to my phone, because we didn't have cell phones then, or I didn't, crawl to my phone, call, and an ambulance come get me from 15 miles away. So I said to myself, or I thought it was to myself, but I said, I'm not going to go. And the voice, it goes, huh, you said you wanted this, and now that I'm going to give it to you, you're not going to go. And it laughed 3 times. And the first time it laughed, the wall of light turned into a sphere of light. And it looked sort of like one of those mirrored balls that people put in the garden, except it wasn't reflecting anything. And then the second laugh, it got smaller. The third laugh, it was gone, and I was wide awake.
We are talking with Byron Lacy tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You can find his book, Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee, on Amazon. Byron, after all that you have gone through, have you figured out which group or groups are taking you?
I actually think that I would say there are the people that I met with and that saved my life and that talked to me. I call them people. I met them in March of last year, and they are about 7 feet tall, but they don't look like us. It was in another dimension, and they almost look like they're outlined in light, or maybe even made of light. And they're benevolent towards me. In fact, they seem to love me. Then there are the grays that come and do the same thing all the time, probably, where they put these round bruises on me a lot. And then I've been told by a psychic, Carol Clark, that reads for another writer whose name I can't think of right now. He writes a lot about conspiracies, about the Rothschilds, about the reptilians. I think his name is David Icke. That's his name. I found her in one of his books, and I wrote to her, and she said that I draw in. She said I have a very unusual aura and energy field, and I draw in just random aliens every once in a while because they want to see what's going on. They want to see what I am. And so basically, I'd say a random rotating group is number 3, and they probably come in 3 or 4 times a year. And then the grays that come in and do everything once a month or twice a month. And the thing I hate the most is them taking neurotransmitters. And then my people that appear to watch over me and sometimes talk to me.
So you have a bunch of different groups that are actually taking you and checking you out. Have you ever thought, why me? Why is this happening to me? And have you ever been able to get an explanation as to why?
I've never been able to get an explanation. At first, I wondered why me. And then when I went to the Dreamland Festival and found out that I was the 4th generation, and I put everything together and realized my parents were abducted too, then I knew that was why, whatever the reason them for taking generations. But I had a great deal of angst about the whole thing at first. I mean, the thought that somebody can come into your house, do something to you, wipe out your memory, and leave, and all you see is the marks. It's sort of disturbing right at first. Especially, I was a very reclusive person at that time and had been for years. But the fact that they had saved my life 8 times, I wouldn't. At first, I was going, I wish they'd never been here. And then I go, hey, I wouldn't be here because I started out life with cancer. I had cancer when I was. It started when I was 1 year old, and they couldn't find it. Or let me rephrase that. I went to a country doctor in Marble Falls, Texas, just the city doctor, and he just didn't even think about cancer in a 1-year-old baby. What had happened was I stopped developing. I stopped sitting up, stopped having any interest in food, and it just got worse and worse over the next year and a half. And I stopped being able to urinate. So he sent me to a urologist in Austin. And Dad told me that when the doctor came down off the elevator from upstairs where they were doing the tests, he was as white as his doctor's coat. And he told my parents that I had cancer, that I had a sarcoma, that I was going to die. They were going to operate the next week, but my chances of survival were nil. He said nobody lives from a sarcoma. They couldn't figure out why it had not spread through my whole body in that year and a half. And he told my parents to go home and start working on another baby so it would lessen the blow when I died. So I'm pretty sure they kept that cancer in check. Now, the question would be, why didn't they fix it? Well, my cancer caused a lot of different things in my life. For one thing, I cannot have children, and I have no prostate, so I won't get prostate cancer. But it made me feel that I had a mission in life. And everybody told me that. Everybody said, God saved my life, angels saved my life, and you must have something important you're supposed to do. And oddly enough, I thought at first I was supposed to be a writer. But as I finished my English degree, I got really interested in art, which I had minored in because I thought it would give me plenty of time to write, and I figured it would be easy. Well, it turned out to be too easy, and I left and got a master's and an MFA in art. And then I've written 2 books, but they've been in the last 4 years. And now I consider myself more of a writer and an artist.
Well, the 2 and 2 come hand in hand, except for me. I just know how to write and speak. I can't draw a stick figure if my life depended on me. You mentioned earlier, Byron, about the neurotransmitters. What do you mean by that?
Well, I would wake up sometimes, about 4 times a year, feeling horrible. And I ended up running my hand through my hair, and I would find a little wound. One day there was a bump on the top of my head back, towards the back, in the back quadrant of it, and a needle hole in it. Well, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't like that very much. And then I met a person on Facebook who was making these posters about them harvesting neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, all of these things. And he claimed that they use them as drugs for themselves, recreational drugs, apparently. Well, after I figured that out, after he told me that, one day I had for a week I had stopped drinking Diet Coke because I had heard about the bad effects of NutraSweet. And I'd been depressed slightly all the time, or just a dark mood, and it went away by the end of that week. But then I woke up feeling really bad, and I couldn't get rid of it. So I went and got a Coke, and I drank it, and I started feeling better. And I go, this doesn't make any sense. So I searched all of the ingredients in colas, and they have something in them that no other colas have, and that is phosphine. No, I'm sorry. Phosphoric acid. I knew it was close to that. So I looked up phosphoric acid, and phosphoric acid was going to be used by the military in World War I as an antidote for nerve gas. And what nerve gas does, it either increases or decreases, I do not remember which, the amount of choline in your brain and in your body, which causes your muscles to harden up, and your heart will stop beating and you'll stop breathing. So, and that was before I met the guy with the posters. And I started taking choline and drinking a Diet Coke every time they would hit me that way. And I would feel better, but it would still take all day to get totally well. Then when I met him, I found out about the other things. So I started taking all of the precursors, which are amino acids, like L-phenylalanine, GABA, L-tyrosine, and a few others. I would take those every day. I started taking them every day, but I would take very large doses when they would get me in that way. And it worked.
Well, you know what? If it works for you, that's the main thing, because everybody has to find their own pattern. That's one thing that I'm learning through this. I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I can say this. When I started having my experiences, it pushed my anxiety to the limit. But when I started Spaced Out Radio, I noticed that one day I had run out of medication, and I never looked back. And I've been med-free by putting my energies into the show since January of 2015. So I fully agree with what you're saying. You have to find what works for you and your body. Byron, I'm going to get you to hold on here for just a couple of minutes. We are talking with author Byron Lacy, his book, Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abduction. Tonight on Spaced Out Radio, we're going to ask him about the abductions right after this. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
With an ever-expanding listenership base, Spaced Out Radio is the perfect place for you to advertise your product. Our listeners support those who sponsor this show. So whether you're an author or a company, Spaced Out Radio is the perfect place for you. Our pricing is more than competitive, and your advertisements will be seen and heard every show. Head to spacedoutradio.com and advertise with us today. Contact us at info@spacedoutradio.com today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Ratings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm rating, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm just really glad to be here. All right.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. And welcome back for hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, here in spirit, as my physical body is probably getting ready to see Axl Rose and the rest of Guns N' Roses on stage right now in Las Vegas. In spirit with us as well is Byron Lacy, author of Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abduction, which can be found on Amazon. We're going to get Byron in here momentarily. I do want to remind you, you could follow us on Twitter at Space Out Radio. You could give our Facebook page a like, Space Out Radio Show. On Instagram, we could be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube subscription channel is Space Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. I am gone for the weekend. Uncle Jimbo James Tyson will be in with Spaced Out Weekend tomorrow and Sunday night. He is also going to host for me on Monday, so I will be back on Spaced Out Radio on Tuesday night. I look forward to seeing you then. Byron, thank you so much for being with us. I love talking aliens, alien abduction, extraterrestrials, you name it. I love it. And I think you are such an important character with your book, Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abduction. Byron, when you look at it, a lot of people, when they see the scars on themselves, they see the effects that it is having. Have you ever noticed any side effects that you have had from your interaction with the extraterrestrials?
Well, I've become more psychic. That's increased things a lot over time. Then there's when they take the neurotransmitters, but the rest of the time there doesn't, except I have not been to a doctor since 2007 because I have not been sick.
That's a nice problem to have, for sure.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm asking that, Byron, is we have a lot of people who listen to this show who have been taken before, whether it's a good experience or whether it's a bad experience. Your experiences sound very positive. Have you ever had a negative experience?
Not that I know of. Now, I've seen some of these marks and I've gone, that had to hurt. A man, my case has been investigated by two different people, and I'm trying to remember the name of the second one, Don Worley. He told me, he said, you're definitely an abductee, and it seems from all your stories like they like you for some reason. He didn't know why, but he said, I've known other people that they seem to like also. And in March of last year, that's when I realized that part of them were my family.
Is it weird to think that you have space family?
Yes. Well, not now. The psychic told me that over a year before March of last year. And when she said that one thing, and it was all done by email, but when she said that, I thought, that just sounds crazy. Well, as the year went on and everything she said had happened, except that one thing, well, but of course it couldn't just happen, I decided to try and accept it. So I laid down to meditate and I just thought about it over and over. I thought about it from every angle. I even thought, wow, I might look really weird. And then I'm going, well, but what difference would it make if I'm that, then I won't think I look weird. And I got to the point after about 35 or 40 minutes that I suddenly believed it intellectually and emotionally. I felt like I actually was an alien soul in a human body. And at that point, it felt like these two things, like fingers, reached into the back of my head where the spine joins to the skull and grabbed a hold of me and started pulling me out. And my ego it wanted to go. And I went, well, you're not going to. I mean, it was talking to me. It said it wanted to go. And I said, obviously you can't. And I felt myself pull away. I couldn't feel my breathing. I couldn't feel my heart. I couldn't feel my body. I couldn't hear the music that was playing in the headphones that I was wearing or the meditation CD, nothing. And then I was very small once again, but then I was standing in this vast space, which looked a lot like a LCD screen. And there were these three men, they looked like men, that looked like they were made of light or lines of light. And behind them was a wall that seemed to go forever. And it was constructed of geometric patterns, sort of like tiles, except all of the lines and everything was light. And then the rest was this darkness behind it of space. And Carol had told me I was in a different dimension at that point in time, one that's right next to ours. But at any rate, that was later, she told me that. I'm standing there, well, I'm floating there, whatever you want to say it. I had no body. And one of them says, we're very proud of you. No, he said, we've been waiting for you to figure this out. That's what he said first. And then he said, we're very proud of you. And then it was like a wind of love was just blasting around me and through me and everything. And information started pouring down into my head very fast, like when you used to dial up on your telephone to hook up your computer, the way that noise is going, that was the way it felt. And every once in a while I would get a glimpse of a word or a picture or something, but I couldn't hold on to it at all. I didn't have my ego or my memory with me. And then I started floating back towards, hopefully, I thought, towards my body, although I was not afraid. And I suddenly saw this it was like a cookie cutout of me, made of light or of plasma or of fog. At the time I saw it, I sort of thought of it as fog in a way. It was about 4 inches thick, but it was probably 5'10", just like I am. And it started moving towards me. And when it got to me, we joined together and moved into my body. And it was after that that I started becoming more gregarious, able to talk to people. My taste in foods changed, where I liked more. All of my tastes and things expanded, where I liked almost every kind of music, almost every kind of movie, almost every book, just everything. It was really weird. It was like all of those dislikes had just been removed. Well, I did talk with Carol Clark about this, and she said that because of my discovery, because of my realization, it was pretty much time for me to get on with what I was supposed to do. And I needed this part of me, which was a more developed part of myself, which had stayed behind. It had not been given to me at birth. So it was given to me on that day. And that was March 18th, I believe, or the 8th, one of the two. It has an 8 in it.
You have obviously talked with a lot of extraterrestrial abductees in order to find out your own information, because we all look for solitude in other people who have experiences. Were you surprised at the differences in experiences that everybody was having, not just on the positive side, but the negative side as well?
I wasn't so surprised by the positive things, but I feel very sorry for the people that have the negative experiences, or the ones that have to deal with my labs. And there's just not much you can say to them to help them. But I don't really read very much about abductions. I don't watch very much TV about abductions or UFOs or anything, because I work on it during the day, and I worked on my book, and I talk with people on Facebook about their problems and the things that are happening to them. And a lot of people have been telling me that my book has opened their eyes, and it's made them feel better because somebody else is going through the same thing. And I have noted from listening to their experiences that they are very similar to mine, to a lot of them, although some of them don't get talked to, but they still, they don't have the horrific things happen to them.
Do you find then that you are somewhat of a mentor to a lot of people now, Byron, because you've had these experiences for over 6 decades, and there's people who have not come to grips, whether it's positive or negative, with the experiences that they're having?
Yes. And one of the first things I do is try to get them to read, to write their stories down, to take pictures, but also they're always in shock when it first happens. Why me? What's going on? And they're always slipping into denial. And I found myself, it can still happen, but not recently. So I try to let them know that it's real. And I always say, you're not crazy. If you were crazy, you would not think that you're crazy. So crazy people don't think there's anything wrong with them. You're perfectly sane. And I try and reassure them and help them to find their way. Mostly it's people who has just found out that I help, because the others don't need very much help. So I do like alien abduction triage, psychological triage.
And for the people who you are dealing with, is it mostly on the positive sense, or are you getting a lot of people who are not understanding how your events are positive and theirs are so negative? Is there a difference between the two?
I find a lot of people who are afraid. They're having the same things done to them that I am, but they're afraid of it. Their attitude is different. I try to help them, unless, of course, they are having horrific experiences, but the ones I'm talking about are not. And I try to help them look at it differently. I mean, they know more about the truth about reality than 60% of the population. And I also tell some of them, especially if they have children, about my life being saved so many times. And sure enough, some of them will come up with a memory of how their life was saved, and they didn't know how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like having insurance for yourself and your children if they want to keep you around.
For sure. We are talking with Byron Lacy tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His latest book, Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee, can be found on Amazon.com right now. Byron, if we can just take a couple of moments to focus on the negative side of the ET abduction. And I know that's hard for someone like you or even me, where my experiences have been positive, to fathom. But there's a lot of people out there having these hellish nightmares of surgeries and implants and women getting symptoms like they're pregnant, but there's no baby or fetus in their stomach. When you hear stories like this, what is your reaction to people when they come to you for help?
Well, I tell them to talk to them. I tell them to talk to them as much as they possibly can in their minds, because if they're taking them, they probably have an implant. And most of the people I talk to do have different versions of tinnitus, which is signals from an implant if it's not normal tinnitus, or you can even have both. To talk to them and try and ask them not to hurt them so much, to talk to them. And, it's like when you get abducted by humans, one thing they tell you is try to get them to call you by your name, to try and look at you as a being instead of just something that they've taken. And so that's all I can think of for them to do, is try and talk to them.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the people who are having these nightmares and they are so scared, they're afraid of everything, they're afraid of sleeping, they're afraid of being awake, they become afraid of people in general because, for the most part, society is not accepting these experiences as what is going on truly out there. So when you see these people living in fear, do you try and portray that confidence and that astute type of intrigue that you may have for their stories, but that you can pass on that information that you have received in order to help them, to let them know that they are not alone?
Yes. I've had luck with some people. In fact, it seems that once you let go of your fear, some of the negative things start slacking off and you have more positive experiences. But that is not always true. It's just worth a try.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you are helping these people and they are starting to notice marks on their body, like for instance, I know I've been taken. I woke up on the table. I know I was implanted in the back of my head when I got taken. I never felt any pain. To me, it was a pleasant experience, as weird as that may sound. But for a lot of people, such as yourself, who've had marks put on them, they're scared. Are there anything or any places that we should look at night when we think we may have been taken, or we're not sure if we've been taken?
Well, I scan my whole front of my body and the back of my legs every night and every morning. I get punctures on my arms. Usually there are 3 to 5 of them. I've had up to 21 on my wrist at one time. I get bruises. Now, they can appear anywhere. I've had them on my torso every once in a while, but mostly now they're coming on my right leg, right above my knee on the side. And the bruise will almost go away, and they do it again. So, like last month, I think that bruise got renewed about 4 times. So you just have to check yourself. I can't look at my back. Today, I was feeling in my back, and I felt 1 or 2 little bitty scabs, like that there may be needle punctures there, but I could never see it. And I try to photograph almost every mark.
That makes sense. Do you subscribe to the theory then that if you use a black light that your marks should be able to glow, or the areas on your body that they went in should be able to glow?
Not the black light that you buy at the music store. Daryl Sims told me it's a black light that has a wider range to it, and it is used for investigations. I don't have one, so I don't know if mine glow or not. It doesn't really matter to me whether they glow because I know it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Are your experiences then, getting back to you, are your experiences then all over the place? Like, say you vacation in Mexico, or you getting taken in Mexico, or say you spend the night at a friend's house. Does it happen there, or is it only strictly in your home?
I was taken the night I was at the Dreamland Festival. It happens. I've been taken in my car driving down the highway. I have had a mark appear on my hand not right in front of my eyes. I was at a restaurant and I moved the menu, and then I look away for some reason and I look back and there's a mark on my hand. I know a woman that had a round bruise appear in the shower. And I had a girlfriend that had a round mark, almost the size of a coffee cup, a red, perfectly round, quarter-inch thick circle, not a sphere, not a dot, but the outline, appear on her back. The moment I was giving her a massage, I looked away, I looked back, and there it was, and it wasn't anywhere where I was working. That was strange. They can get you at any time, anywhere.
Do you find, though, that you are being taken more on a spiritual level than you are on a full body level?
Well, I'm pretty sure that I'm not always taken to a ship. That is not very often. That's probably more when they do some kind of big procedure like the probe. They come into my room, and Carol has told me they actually shift me into another dimension and do something to me. Now, I think they can actually mark your astral body or your etheric body, and it show up on your physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Because I know there's a control panel in our solar plexus that they can pull out and manipulate to do things like I'll just do the story. I was sitting on the sofa. No, I got a CD with sonic sounds on it, frequencies to kill tinnitus because I wanted to see what would happen. And you were supposed to listen to it once every other day. And I listened to it like 5 times a day for 7 days. And all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I heard complete silence. Well, it was a very strange experience. Anyway, that night I was on the sofa watching TV, and suddenly a different show was on right in the middle, one I would never watch. My forehead felt like someone had pumped air into it, and one of my nostrils burned like someone had shoved something all the way up into my sinus cavity. And the tinnitus was louder than it had ever been before. So I realized they had replaced whatever I had gotten rid of. And the next day, it was still extremely loud, and I didn't feel very good. I was depressed. And I told them they had messed up, and I wanted them to fix it. That evening, I felt really tired around 6 o'clock and went and laid down to meditate. Went into a very deep trance, but I was still aware of my body. And I felt a column rise up out of my solar plexus about 6 or 7 inches, and it had 8 sides. And I felt something swirling one of the sides, and it suddenly my depression went away and the sound of the tinnitus went back down to normal. And I felt really good that day and the next. And after I got through on the sofa, though, my nose was wider, my sinuses were wider open than they had ever been before without any medicine that I knew of.
Wow, indeed. That always feels pretty good when you have something like that happen.
Yes.
Byron, we only got a couple minutes here before we got to go to our final break of the night. When you look at your experiences, why haven't you asked them to stop if they've become such a major part of you? Or do you think that this is just your life path that you need to take?
Well, they knew I wanted them to stop because I thought about it a lot. Then I got to the point where my psychic abilities were increasing. I realized they had saved my life. I thought, I don't want them to stop because I have the ability to get into a lot of sticky situations in cars and things like that, and in life in general, not with people, but just ways of hurting myself. So because I'm impulsive, or I was. So I decided I didn't want them to leave. And then when I found out that they were my family and all the things they had done, I just find it actually fascinating. And I never wanted to live a plain, boring life, and I haven't. And now I feel a true purpose with my book, because it is helping people. I'm getting feedback all the time. And also I'm doing my little part to bring about disclosure. So, no, I don't want them to leave.
Have you ever had any harassment from family members, friends, coworkers about you going public in regards to your experiences in writing this book?
I had a lot of anxiety. The one thing that happened after I'd written it, and I gave copies to my entire family at Thanksgiving, about 7 different people, and they're mostly my wife's in-laws and family of her husband. Well, we were at the kitchen table for Christmas, and she said, "Well, I've got to talk to you." And I said, what about? She said, "Well, about your book." And I'm going, "Oh God." She said, "So I want to talk to you later." And I said, "Well, you ought to just tell me now, because there's not anything I can do about it. It's already published." And she said, "I know." I said, "Well, what is it you didn't? What is it that's bothering you?" She said, "You said in there that I wet the bed, and you told that to everybody in the family." I said, "Well, actually, I told it to everybody in the world." So that was the one thing she got upset about, which I thought was really strange, because she could have gotten upset about anything.
Well, that's a good wife you have then. Very good, supportive wife.
Sister.
Oh, sister. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, on that little error, we're going to hop out for our final break of the night. We are talking with author Byron Lacy. Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee is his book. It can be found on Amazon. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back after this break.
Looking for a place to get your product to the public? Advertise with us at Spaced Out Radio. At spacedoutradio.com, you can check out our pricing and packages that best suit your budgetary needs. Whether you're a budgeted author or a company looking to expand, our listeners support the products that support spacedoutradio.com. Advertising with us is an effective way to get your message out. Contact us at info@spacedoutradio.com and get your ads out today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit. And expect a miracle.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio. And we give it up to you guys, all the listeners and the live listeners. You can get something special and hang out in the chat room. And we love to have you. So we'll see you every Saturday night at 8 p.m. You know where.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
The last Monday of the month on Spaced Out Radio is a night of psychic vision, mediumship, UFO and ET contact, Bigfoot stories, animal communication, and so much more with me, Elizabeth Anglin. I'd love it if you would join host Dave Scott and I on the myriad of topics we delve into. Every month, we share new views that may help you understand your own experiences. So tune on in at spacedoutradio.com and stamp your cosmic passport.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Missed most of tonight's show? Don't worry, you didn't miss a thing. You can head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and download our archives for free. And don't forget to get your Space Travelers membership today. Now, back to tonight's show. And welcome back for the final half hour of Space Out Radio tonight. I am here in spirit as I am at Guns N' Roses in Las Vegas. They are performing right now. I am giving the horns to Axl, Slash, and Duff, enjoying my time. Also here in spirit is author Byron Lacy. We're going to bring in Byron for the final segment here momentarily. Before we do, I do want to remind you that you can follow Space Out Radio on Twitter, at Space Out Radio. On Facebook, you can give our show a like, Space Out Radio Show. On Instagram, we can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. In for the next 3 nights will be Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, with Spaced Out Weekend, Saturday and Sunday night. James will also be hosting for me on Monday as I try and catch up on some sleep. I will be back with you on Tuesday night with Davina Caballo talking about reawakening yourself. We bring in author Byron Lacy for the final time. Byron, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Your spirit sounds great, much like mine does tonight.
Thank you, Dave.
Well, I wish I could tell you right now how good the concert is, but I will be live tweeting it during the show. But I do appreciate you taking the time to step with us. I would love to know, and for you to introduce your book, Chosen, Chronicles of an Alien Abductee, which is found on Amazon right now.
Well, Chosen is a 441-page book. It's I didn't want to write a book like all the others. I didn't want it to sound like a fiction book or a novel. I worked for 3.5 years for Child Protective Services. That was the last job I had, and I was an investigator of allegations of child abuse. So I learned how to write up cases, and I tried to write my experiences in that manner, which is you just basically stick to the facts. You don't go into how you feel about anything. You write what happened, what was said to you, what was done. And I call these journal entries because they were journal entries at one point, or most of them. Then I would talk about what I felt and what I thought between these journal entries. And every once in a while, I would put in an experience that did have a lot of emotion. I would leave that out of the journal entry part and put it in the other. So that's the way that the book is structured. And people tell me there's a lot of information in it, and they like the way it's written. And it took me 60 years to write it. It took me 1.5 years, and it took the aliens 60 years to do all of their part.
Did you find that you were remembering a lot more of your stories as you researched your own background in regards to this? Were there stories that you had forgotten about that all of a sudden came to you and you're like, man, I remember that?
Well, the old stories, I actually remembered all of them because I had told them over and over again to people. Even though I didn't think they were aliens, I didn't have the faintest idea about that, but I did discover I was really glad I had kept a journal, because I realized there were experiences that I had completely forgotten that had happened since 2009. That's another reason to write things down, because our memory is pretty selective and it can just disappear on some things.
What's your favorite part of the book that you recollected that you were able to put down on paper?
Well, the 3 experiences where I saw them, the one in 1955 and the one in 2009. And that experience also was very profound. That's when I found out from them what they were doing to me. I spent, after I found out what was going on, I spent 6 to 8 hours a day walking under the electric line in my backyard, asking them what they were doing, asking them if I was crazy. I was asking all these questions, and I finally blowed it down to, I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what you're doing. And I thought if I said that enough, they would, and I'd say it out loud, and I would say it psychically. And I figured they'd get tired of me talking to them and would give me an answer. Well, I played at Country Kitchen, which was a little restaurant, for the first time. It was a horrible experience. The first song went good, and then the words would leave my mind before I would sing them. So I made up most of the words to all the songs that I sang. And at the mid-time break, this guy comes up out of the audience and he says, I'm a guitar player. I'm going to help you. Get your words out of the guitar case. Look at me. Don't look at the audience. And we'll get through this. So we did. And it worked great. Everybody loved it. And the last song I sang was Hey, Mr. Spaceman by the Byrds. Well, I went home and it was 11. I usually go to bed at 10 at that point in time, but I was too awake and I decided to meditate. So I get in there and I start meditating, and suddenly I can't feel my breath. I can't feel my heart. And I feel my body, okay. Then there's this blackness for a second, and then I feel my body, I'm breathing, but I'm not in my bed. I'm in this hammock that is hung from side to side instead of end to end. And I'm going, what the heck? And there are 3 blankets in this hammock with me, and some of them were torn. They'd been there a long time, and one of them looked like, in this dim light, that it was a child's blanket. I suddenly realized I was in an alien ship, and I'm going, wow, they are answering my question right now. I'm here. And I got elated, and I grabbed hold of the edges of the hammock at the end and pulled myself out. And I noticed everything looked really fuzzy. Well, at some point, I just reached up and touched the side of my head, and my glasses weren't there. In dreams, I'm always wearing my glasses, and I'm always wearing my clothes. When I meditate, I don't wear clothes, and I didn't have any on at that point. So I was glad it was warm in the room. And there was a light coming down from the ceiling, or coming down from above me. I couldn't tell where from. It was almost like it came out of the air. It was really strange. There weren't light fixtures that I could see, and I couldn't see any corners of the room. And there were two other hammocks in there. And I took a step back, and then I heard light footsteps coming from the other side of the open doorway. And I went, I don't think I am ready to deal with this. And I look around, and I move over to the hammock really fast, and I start to climb in when everything goes black. And then it comes right back in, just like a cut in a movie. And I am on a metal table. And then I'm on the metal table, and I'm in bed watching myself on this metal table. And Daryl told me they can make you see whatever you want, and they can make you see through their eyes. Well, at this point then, there were 3 grays down at the foot of the table, or on the side, just like in 1955. And there was this tall being that I had never heard of and never seen, and he looked really weird. He had a huge head with big eyes, and he's wearing a robe, a big, long robe, and it was rather colorful, but I don't remember what the pattern was. And it had a high collar on it that went right up to his head, and you couldn't see his hands. And I was about to flip out, and he says, "Do not be afraid." And suddenly I wasn't afraid. His suggestion had controlled my nervous system, and I probably couldn't have been afraid. Then the picture changed to black and white, and it zoomed in where it was me from the neck down to right above my knees, laying on this table. And then they inserted the anal probe into me. And so they were showing me what they did. Well, then suddenly I was in my bed. I was wide awake, and I was elated because I'm going, wow, they actually took me. They answered my question. This is what they're doing. And then I went to sleep. No insomnia, nothing. I just turned over and went to sleep. It always takes me an hour or 2 hours to go to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I woke up and I was really happy, and I went, wow, it really happened. I can't wait to tell my friend Frank. And quickly I took a piece of paper and drew the picture of that creature because I could still remember it. And then I started crying. And it wasn't crying because of thoughts. I didn't even know why I was crying, but I cried for almost 45 minutes. And finally it stopped, maybe because I didn't have any more tears, and I was pretty tired, but I still felt fine. And I thought, well, that's really weird. At this point, I convinced myself that it was a vision, that they were showing me what they did. But after thinking about the crying and after talking to Daryl Sims about it, he said, no, it happened. You wouldn't have cried if it was a dream. Well, during that day, this was the first time that a lot of my tastes changed, and I found I could eat broccoli and enjoy it, and all kinds of things like that. Country music, more, everything. I went over to Frank's house, and I told him what had happened. And then I said, now, this is probably going to invalidate everything I've told you because I saw this guy. I never heard of him. And he looks at it, and he turns around to his computer, and he looks up a web page, and there on the web page is a drawing by a child of the exact creature that I had drawn. He told me it was a mantis creature. And so it didn't invalidate anything. It actually validated it.
We are talking with Byron Lacy tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking about his book on Amazon, Chosen: Chronicles of an Alien Abductee. Is there going to be a second feature to this book because with your experiences that keep on moving forward, that it's something that you want to pursue and keep in the public eye?
I hope so. I hope I can get them. I hope I can have more contact with the beings on the other dimension and maybe go there a little more and see where I'm from. But time will tell. And they haven't done it yet. Of course, it hasn't been all that long. So I still write down things just in case.
Is it something, Byron, where you would wait for word from them, for them to say, okay, now it's time to write this second book? Or is that something you feel is a decision you would make on your own?
I think it's a decision I would make on my own. I could be wrong. You know, who knows? I don't know how many of my ideas are my ideas.
And that makes sense. Yeah, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. I do want to touch on, for the final 15 minutes of this show, if you don't mind, I would like to talk about the fact that earlier I had asked you in the program regarding what had changed in you. What were some of the side effects in you? And one of the things that you brought up was the fact that you have become more psychic. Can you explain that in detail for us?
Well, I know things before they happen. The other day I had a date, and I'm not going to go into the event, but when I woke up, I knew that she was going to do this she was going to start talking on this particular subject, and it wasn't anything I wanted to talk about, and I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. And I didn't think of a plan because I thought maybe I thought, surely not. Well, we got to dinner and everything was going good for the first 10 minutes. And then she started talking about that very thing. And for an hour and a half that happened. It pretty much destroyed our friendship. So things like that happen. I always seem to end up going to the right place at the right time to meet people, or different things like that. But I can tell what people are thinking.
Yeah, so
I can tell what people are thinking, and I can tell more from their tone of voice than from the words they are saying, because sometimes the tone of voice tells me that they're lying.
Have you been able to get it to the point where, let's say you're on Facebook chat or texting with someone, that by the way they type their words or the way they structure their sentences, you can automatically pick up their energy and feel what their mood is for that day? That's one of the gifts that I have noticed that I have had since I've started getting in touch with my own intuition through my contact with extraterrestrials.
You know, sometimes before I open my phone to read a text, I get hit with their emotions. And the same thing on Facebook, too. Yes, I feel their energy. I feel what they're feeling. Sometimes I feel like an open door or a revolving door or something like that. And now this has been going on for a long time, but it's stronger now. I have realized that when an emotion that I'm feeling is totally alien to me, or a thought is nothing that I would ever think, that it's actually the person's thought that I'm with. And it's proved to be true.
When did you start noticing your psychic abilities?
Well, in 1998, is when they really kicked up a lot, and I started practicing remote viewing on the computer. I started going on chat channels, and this was another time my life was saved too. I went on chat channels and talked to people, and I would tell them what their home looked like, and some of them were in the Philippines, and one or two of them just disconnected and left. And one guy, he kept saying, "Nope." I said, "Well, there's a coffee cup right next to your typing screen." He said, "No." So everything I told him, he said, "No, you got it wrong. You got it wrong." Then when we finished, I started to say goodbye, and he said, "Wait a minute." He said, "What do you think would happen if someone lied to you while you were trying to do this?" And I said, "Well, I'd figure it would probably block me and I wouldn't be able to do it." And he said, "Well, that's not the case, because you got everything right."
Oh, I haven't had that yet.
While I was on a chat channel talking, every Friday night I went out with these people who rented a house from me, and they drove a Jeep, and I rode in the very back, laying down behind the front seat and look at the sky or whatever. One evening, and it was a Friday, I got so engrossed in this conversation with this woman in the Philippines that I didn't keep my appointment with them, and we had such a relationship that if I didn't show up, they just knew to go on their own. At midnight, I was still talking on the computer, and someone started knocking on my door. It was unusual for me to be up, and it was really unusual for someone to knock on my door. I live out in the woods, and on 2 acres. I go to the door, and it's my next door neighbor, and he said that my tenants had a car wreck. They had flipped their car 3 times, and that they were at the hospital, and she was unconscious, and he was dead.
Oh, wow.
The next day I went to look at that car, and they had hit the only culvert on that entire road at that time. If they had gone off the road anywhere else, this would not have happened. When they hit the culvert, it flipped the car backwards, and it landed where I would have been sitting and smashed the entire back end flat. And during that flight, it threw her from the car because she didn't have a seatbelt on. Then it took to the air again, and it hit, and they think that's when the seatbelt cut his throat, and he died pretty quick. There was blood all inside the car. He had no other wounds. So I really, and I had no reason or knowledge of who, but I really felt I'd been saved by keeping me glued to the computer instead of going with them.
Mm-hmm. How do you know the difference then between what is extraterrestrial messages coming to you and what is, say, your spirit guides or messages from gods or angels?
Mostly the voice. The voice has always been the same, and it's the same voice that talked to me in 2009, and that's when I realized that was the voice that took me to the light in 1999. So anytime a voice has talked to me, it's been their voice. And I don't know how to explain it any better, that there just seems to be some kind of atmosphere about it.
Mm-hmm. And in regards to that voice that you are hearing then, does it, to put it on a human context, is it more male? Is it more female? Is it more computerized? Or does it not just sound anything like us?
Now, that voice sounds exactly like a human being, except that it does not have any emotional intonations. Now, it doesn't talk in a monotone. Well, when it said I was not going to go in the lot, it sounded a little bit sarcastic, actually. So they can get frustrated by me, I'm afraid. But they have from what I've been in contact with them, they do not seem to have any self-doubt at all. They don't seem to have the same ego problems that we have that work on us, our own brain attacking us. They don't seem to have that at all. So they sound rather logical, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Byron, I should have probably asked you this earlier when we were talking about the ETs, but have they ever, Byron, told you where exactly in the universe they are from?
No. Carol Clark told me, but I really don't remember. And it wasn't Zeta. I've got it written down somewhere, but I'm not going to be able to lay my hands on it right now.
So, is it kind of strange to know that these creatures are traveling multi-million miles to pay attention to you, of all people? Is that still a little surreal for you 60 years later?
Yes. And also, Carol has told me that I'm actually from another dimension that occupies the same space as this planet. But that I'm also from another planet too, so I don't know how that all works out. So anyway, yeah, it's strange.
That is a little odd. What do you say to your detractors then who say, Byron, you have one very vivid imagination? How do you convince them that it's real, what is happening to you?
I haven't had that problem yet, but it's probably coming up. You know, they can say whatever they want to say. I know what I've seen, I know what I've heard, and I know what has happened. If they have a better explanation and can prove it to me that it's not real, then go for it. But how could they prove? They can't prove it's not real any more than I can prove it's real. It would just be their opinion. And usually a person that says something like that, I don't think aliens walking in the room would actually change their mind.
Isn't that the truth? Because there's so much skepticism around the people in these types of fields that at times it gets a little overwhelming for some people because the frustration is just there because people want to voice their opinion on not believing instead of trying to figure out what could plausibly be out there. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and the skeptics have an investment in this, the ones that are writing about things and talking about things, because that's the way they're making money. So they sure don't want it proved to be true.
Sure enough. My friend, we have about 1 minute left on Spaced Out Radio tonight. I would love it if once again you can tell people where they can get in touch with you, where they can find your book, and is there a possibility that some of our listeners love to pick up autograph books? Is that possible as well?
Yes, they would have to write to me, and I would have to autograph and send them to the book. Right at this time, I'm going to try and fix a way to where I have books for sale through Amazon that are autographed. I'll try to get to work on that pretty soon. I'm going to be at a festival in Tyler, a Paracon on the 23rd, but the easiest way to reach me is through Facebook. If you buy a copy of my book, it's got my email in it. My email is all little letters. Byron Lacy is one word with 21 tied onto that at yahoo.com. And they can always send me a message on Facebook, send me a friend request, whatever. I talk to anybody that approaches me.
I love the fact that you are so open and willing to chat with people about this. I mean, a lot of people in this field don't get that, but I think you're a very special person, Byron, for being able to put your messages and your stories in the book, and I highly recommend any of our listeners who are ET abductees or contactees to pick it up on Amazon.com today because it'll help you out. Byron, thank you so much for being on Space Out Radio tonight. It was an absolute pleasure. I'd been looking forward to this for a long, long time. You go enjoy the rest of your night. I'm going to head off in Spirit Land, join my body in Las Vegas, and enjoy the rest of the Guns N' Roses concert. I hope you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. I had a very good time talking with you.
Take care, my friend.
People are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized. hypnotized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere. Watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, where the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you